I have the absolute pleasure of now introducing our last speaker for the day. Tia really kind of needs no introduction. I could talk about her accomplishments and all the things that she's done in the world of life sciences, but I don't think I'd do them justice, and I'll let Tia do that herself in a second. But when we took a change in our outlook and approach to marketing, way back when Glenn gave birth to the idea of insight, success, and marketing, Tia was one of the first people we reached out to speak to us and look at sort of our community slightly differently. When our marketing sort of stopped becoming just how do we better enable sales and our recruiters and the guys at the desks to get more people through the doors, and let's look at the people within our communities and the people who are really making a difference in the world of life sciences. So Tia has always had a super important part to the journey of Meet, and was essentially one of the first blocks that was put down to get us to where we are now. So I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Tia to the stage.
First of all, very, very honored to be here today. Traveled all the way from Philadelphia, PA, I guess to have a candid conversation. I'm not going to read all this. You can look it up on LinkedIn, but, first African-American queer woman to start and own a biomanufacturing facility. 3-time startup founder. I'll get into all that. But working in the biotech industry for over 23 years now, and I'm still an outsider, right? I'm like the poster child for DEI. Short hair, woman, Black, educated, ooh, get scared, right? And then on top of that, repping the city of a brotherly love as best I can, queer. So it really makes some people squirm, right? The audacity of it all. And so this is crazy because this was not coordinated for everybody to have a baby picture, especially at the same age. I'm also 5 years old in my button up because I went to a 7-day Adventist Black-owned private school. So yes, my parents were overachievers in that respect as well, and was homeschooled prior to that. But I put this up here to show how it started, right? I'll go back to this picture. That's important too. That's the best one. But I show this picture of my family because that way you guys can see that I come from families just like yours. Mom, dad, this is when I got my honorary doctorate. Education, same blip, doesn't matter, right? We'll get to that picture in a minute. And I want to show you that I started out just like everybody else in this room. So we're gonna go through the story a little bit. Background, so I moved around a lot, born in Gary, Indiana, raised in Houston, Texas, high school in Atlanta, particularly Marietta, shout out to Wheeler High School. And then I left. I only applied to one out-of-state college, Howard University. And no, I did not know about Howard University and all this gratitude and elegance that you know about it today, courtesy of former VP Kamala Harris. But my mother simply told me, you're going to apply to that school. 2 of your cousins went to their school. They're successful, so you're going to apply. And I got in. I actually got into another school that I wanted to go to locally in Atlanta. But the only reason why I wanted to go is because they gave you a free laptop. And my mom was like, it's not about, I could buy you a laptop. Just the least of your worries, right? So I went there, started out undecided for the first 2 years, going against the grain. And then I settled for my talent in biotech, right? Graduated. In between that, had multiple internships between NIH, Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. Started my career literally at Howard University Cancer Center. So that was my first exposure to human clinical trials, the biotech industry, how everything worked. And at that time, I was on track to be your traditional medical doctor because that is the prescription for all underrepresented women, lawyer, doctor, veterinarian, something of that nature. And so I went against the grain, but went along with it and became a scientist. So my first job out of college was the internship at Walter Reed. It turned into a job. I was still on track to go to medical school, so I thought. I had the worst time of being given time to study for the MCAT. And so almost got fired because they didn't want me to study for it. They didn't want me to go to the MCAT classes. The MCAT test gets here. Y'all won't believe what happened. The HVAC system caught on fire in the middle of the test. Before that, my car got towed that morning, the rental car. So I said, you know what, God, this ain't supposed to be that hard, bro. So I'm going to lean into this science thing, and we're going to figure it out, right? So when that was going through that, I said, well, let me try the EMT route, right? Let me go be a paramedic. I had a buddy that was the chief of the fire training program in Fairfax, Virginia, which if y'all know anything about firefighters, Fairfax is like the top in the U.S. They're the ones that even Europe or other countries hire when you have those forest fires and things of that nature. So I go in and train, I'm doing my thing, and then I get diagnosed with a chronic condition. So that stopped me in my tracks, right? Leave that, start working at a biotech company called Human Genome Sciences that became GSK. And I was still at that time training to be an EMT. I was like, well, let me just take this job because my PI, primary investigator that y'all heard of earlier, well, she got caught mishandling some funds. And ironically had all the minority students in her department. So all of us was getting fired one by one. Looking for a job, couldn't get it, and went through a temp agency and lucked up and became a manufacturing associate at Human Genome Sciences. So again, studying, decided to go the EMT route, thinking that that'll be my way into med school, and I'll just moonlight over here on the biomanufacturing floor. And so in between that, getting diagnosed, parent made me come home, as Black parents do. When you're sick, you even cough, and you're out of state, you bring your, you know what the next word is, home. So I went home, got better, and told my parents I'm going to take a little trip to LA to visit my friends that had moved out there from Howard. They all pretty much work in entertainment. Well, y'all know what happened to that visit, right? I went to that visit. I said, y'all know the movie Harlem Nights? Maybe not. Watch it. I'm not coming home. Right? My dad chewed me one, right? You just make just stupid decisions. You just do what you want to do. So at that time, because I had been recently diagnosed, that might have been fraud. I might have lost my mind. You know, I had to stay out of the lab until we figured out what was going on. So once we figured out what was going on, I restarted my career at Amgen, again, through a temp agency. And I'm going to stop right there and have y'all seen the movie Hidden Figures? All right, so keep that in the back of your mind. So when I went to restart my career at Amgen, I had to go through a temp agency. I lived in LA, North Hollywood, which is in the valley. But if you know anything about the lay of the land in LA, as far as biotech, those companies are all the way out in Thousand Oaks, okay? I'm in my, 20s. No car, because I recently relocated, right? So I had to take the Amtrak to go to this interview. Now, mind you, on the job description, it says, do you have reliable transportation? Well, you know, I said, yeah, right? So I get to the interview. It takes me all day to get there. Do the interview at Aerotech at the time. And so my guy's like, oh, Tia, you want me to walk you to your car? I said, oh, go ahead. I'm just going to whatever, right, meander. So I'm thinking when we walked out, he's just going to go the opposite way where the majority of the cars were. No, he's going the same way. Well, I got to go catch this bus. So he's like, you okay? I said, yeah, I was going to use the restroom, and you go ahead. I'll be out. Time I got to the bus stop, dude is still there, bro. So I hide behind a tree. True story. Hide behind a tree because I got to get this job because I was moonlighting in entertainment. It just took too long to make money. I wasn't used to that. So, and the doctor gave me clearance to go back, so I ran at it. So I'm hiding behind this tree. And at that time we got cell phones, but you're not getting live alerts, right? So if you got to look up a bus schedule, whatever, you got to physically go to that website. I go to the website, bus going to be 2 hours late. We only have one train to get from Thousand Oaks back to LA proper. And that train leaves at, I want to say it left about 6:45, right? Luckily, I had just the nick of time. It was 4 something. So the bus comes, And it's not a straight shot for me to take this bus back to the train station. I got to take the bus as far as it go and then pay for a cab. So I had about maybe $200 total. 150 of it went to the Amtrak, right? And then the rest of it went to the cab and everything else. So I get back to the station just in time, right? And I'm talking to somebody and they say, oh, you got here just in time because once that train leaves, that's it. I said, what do you mean that's it? You would have had to spend a night in Oxnard. Oh, no. So anyway, I get through all that. I get the job. The whole time I'm working the job, now I couldn't say Amtrak every day. That just wasn't gonna work. So I rented a car from, what was it called? It was called something hoopty, something junk cars for rent. It was terrible. But I rented the car and that's how I got to work every day. And I'm sharing that part of the hustle until I get to the next part to show you that this is in 2000s, guys. But if I didn't tell you that it was about me or when it was, you probably would think it was back in the 1960s, 1970s, right? Lying on job applications, barely no public transportation to get out there. Does that sound reminiscent of today's metropolitan cities around the globe? And trying to create DEI and diversity. It's not just about hiring that person, giving them the skill set. It's also the ancillary things with making sure transportation is available, childcare is available, all these different things. So anyway, I worked an Emden job and it was a temp job, right? So I've been applying while I'm there for full-time positions, blah, 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 blah. Get an interview, first level, second level. And the last level, I'm like, oh, I killed this thing. I already got experience from the East Coast. What are they gonna do? And so I didn't get a job. So I said, okay, well, I'll apply for some more, Never got another interview. Mind you, the guy that they hired, don't laugh, but you're gonna laugh. Caucasian guy, early 20s, recent graduate of the University of whatever it is in Hawaii. I set that up because he was a true surfer boy. So right when he got the job, he went surfing. You know what he came in the next day to work after that interview to start first day as a full-time employee? A full body cast. He can't do no work. He's sitting at the desk, right? But I'm the one you said that's unqualified and can't do the job. And now you're giving me his work. Fast forward, I talked to my team lead, who was a Spanish descent, and thank God for him. And he said, Tia, I'm gonna help you get a job at Baxter. Baxter was literally like across the street, right? I said, okay. So we go through the motions. I had to meet his friend at a bar. At that time, I didn't know nothing about beer. So mind you, I got my craft beer skills up really quick. And I get the job. Now, while I get the job and it starts to come out that Tia's leaving, my boss calls me into his office. And he says, Tia, we're very disappointed in you. Why? You didn't apply to any of the jobs while you were here. Dude, I applied every week. You never got back to me. The one job I did do, you hired the boy in a full body cast. So, left. Going to Baxter, and they had this program. And it's supposed to do some DEI stuff where you come in as a recent grad. Now, mind you, I wasn't a recent grad. But they had this program, you did a rotation. Or you did every 3 months at different Baxter sites. And they got me in that, right? They're like, you come here, we bring you as a temp, you get in as a full-time, we're just gonna slide you into the program. So I'm just waiting to slide. Waiting. Opportunity come, I fill out the paperwork, submit it. Next day I come to work, boss called me in the office. Hey, Tia, we're disappointed in you. Why? And when I say it's a whole team, this is like the president, all these folks that are like higher up, I don't even know who they are, in this tight little room, looking at me like I'm a problem. And I said, what's the problem? Well, you applied for the such and such program. And we're just very disappointed because, we expected you to make your way up to the top the traditional way, promotions and da-da-da-da. Now, me being young and naive, I was like, oh, okay, well, dump the application then, let's rock. So as I stayed at Baxter and go through those steps, never got promoted, not to where I needed to be. So after that conversation, they moved me to a new manufacturing facility on campus, and I had to run that. Now I'm not getting no extra pay, but I'm training everybody, I'm doing everything. Then they say, okay, You want to go in management, we're going to put you on a graveyard shift. Go on the graveyard shift, and I have no support. So imagine if somebody offers you the job, hire you, and then say, oh, you can't do that X and the third, and you got to figure it out. And mind you, we don't know what we're doing either. So I pulled resources together, got together. I got that graveyard shift running like a machine. We listened to, I can't think. You remember that song, Big Sean? I Don't F With You? So that's on every night. We cleaning the fields. I don't F with you. We in there, right? So I'm like, okay, when the interview time comes to hire me permanently, I should be a shoo-in. Absolutely not. Did the interview, and that person proceeds to ask me questions about my new boss that she does not like. Don't ask me anything about my experience there, nothing. They come back to me and say, well, you didn't get the job. Okay, why? Well, we had to promote somebody that's been in the program and they needed a spot. So you're going to have to wait. Does that sound reminiscent of some of the folks in this room? Opportunities got to be made for somebody else just because there's somebody else, if you can take my hint. Right? Kept going. So little did they know, I had already interviewed other biotechs. So I got a supervisor job at another company in Orange County. Very, very different, laid back, and reminiscent to some of the stories that's already been shared today. Opportunity came up after I worked there, brand new facility, same thing again. And they said, Tia, we want you to be manager. So I said, okay, put the paperwork in. And then I thought about it. I looked around. I said, you know what? I ain't doing this ish. Take my application out. And I took it out. And they said, why are you taking the application out? I said, because I'm going to get promoted. You're going to pay me XYZ salary. And I'm going to be doing double the work. It's not going to be you're not going to give me the credibility that I need, right? And I thought I made the right decision. But when it came time for me to leave to go somewhere else, and I explained why I had to hop, it was a very hard conversation to have to go after that next level when I could have had that next level there and did I think I just lost my train of thought. That in? Thank you. Lateral move, that's the word I was looking for. And so that goes back to the conversation. When somebody else thinks you're ready to take advantage of the opportunity, then just take it, right? Even if you feel like that it's going to be more work, it's going to be labor, it's not worth it, and it wasn't worth it. But it will save me a lot of headache at that next role. The next role, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but I'll say like this. I moved to New Hampshire. Catch my drift? I need to say anything else? All right, we won't need to say nothing else. And so after moving to New Hampshire, working that job at Lonza, and then moving to Jersey and working in Philly at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, the same thing kept happening again. I kept getting involved in situations where I do the work, I prove myself, I do work above my pay grade, never got the title, never got the pay. So I said, forget this. It's time to start LucasPye BIO. At the time, LucasPye BIO was called Southern Mad Biologics. I didn't have a name, right? So I said, okay, when I leave, the contracts, they don't want to renew the contract, fine. So I'm going to start, and I got an office in Philly at a co-working space, and we taking off. That was October 2019. Y'all know what happened, right? March 2020, baby, we in COVID. So I put this up here because in COVID, I maximized my brandability, my who I was and everything I was doing, and I was in all this press, right? Even made it all the way to the White House in 22 as an expert on CDMOs and biologics and what we need to do under Biden's administration, I say proudly, to bring back manufacturing to the U.S., right? And I was doing all this stuff for everything was great. So as I'm going through all that, you know, life just is never just going to be smooth. And so towards the end of 22, after I had all this accolades and everything, my father passed. And he passed from, his left ventricle basically got stiff, so it wasn't pumping enough oxygenated blood. But the problem was he was not diagnosed when he was alive. He was a diabetic patient for 10 to 15 years, never diagnosed until his death. And after we buried him, we got phone calls for the next 2 weeks asking, was he coming to the doctor? for his appointments. And then when we told the doctors that, he's passed, we got the response, well, we told your dad to exercise. He couldn't breathe. Y'all know anything about your left ventricle getting stiff? He couldn't make it from the stage to this first row chair without getting out of breath, right? So I took it pretty hard. And I wanted to fight, but I was already in the fight with my previous employer that I can't name that you probably already know. So I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get my mother involved because it's going to be too much on her. So I started Jackson Taylor Therapeutics. Now we're looking at this, and I'm going to take you back, right? I went to Jazz, the rat race was the same, so I said I'm going to start my company. First company was LucasPye BIO, because that's my background. Drug manufacturing, developing drug processes, being in the lab, the whole commercialization process, right? And as I got all those accolades that you saw on the previous page, the one thing that kept coming back from investors as I was trying to raise money was, who are your customers? What is your market entry? So me being a nerd I am, what do you mean? We're bringing manufacturing back. You got all these customers that need this stuff, right? Me not realizing that, yeah, there's customers for everybody else, but is the customer going to trust you? The poster child of DEI with drug manufacturing that topped out at the level of senior manager. So that's below C-suite, right? No matter how I dress that up. So I said, okay, I'm going to start HelaPlex. What's that? Well, it's going to be an accelerator program. Took forever to raise the money, and we just recently got that check, $250K for the accelerator program that we call Hive Bio. And so now that's going to be my pipeline into LucasPye BIO. Same question again before we got that check. Well, who's going to do the accelerator? Who is it for? Underrepresented founders. Where are you going to find them? They're not ready. That's a DEI play. Who cares? All their products that they're developing are for their community. Who cares, right? Okay, well, by that time, Pops went on to glory. So I said, all right, I'm going to start Jackson Taylor Therapeutics. Let's get to the root of the problem, as Dr. Elsa just said earlier, right? And so even though I went backwards, right, the timeline goes this way. You got drug discovery with Jackson Taylor. You got HelaPlex with the High Bio Accelerator program for other people that are developing products for me to help commercialize them. And then if I play my cards right, those that are developing biologic therapeutics will come here to get it manufactured. Now, in the background of all that, and this is my first time showing this, so you guys are lucky. I had to figure out a way and get permission from my commercial development partners. But this is not just a diagram or just me being a poster child DEI saying that this is what's happening. And it goes back to this quote. Where is that? I got my start by giving myself a start. This whole timeline I just described to you is that Tia had to take her career into her reins. Tia had to go outside and knock on doors. Tia had to be told no 100 times. Tia, and I brought this is at Baxter, me on the manufacturing floor. Probably within that same week, I got told that I need to pull out of that program that I told you about earlier. So this demonstrates, for me to fully put this action in plan, yes, I had to collaborate, right? Got a commercial development partner, and we're doing all these great things. And I'll get to this in a second. But the point is, if you guys are sitting here waiting for permission to do what you want to do, to go after what you want to go after, it's not going to happen. No matter how many DEI platforms they claim to have, none of that. And I'll give you an example. Raise your hand if you're a lefty. Nobody's a lefty in here? We just got two. Raise your hand if you're a former lefty, meaning you were converted into a righty. Okay, I guess I'm the only one, okay? And I say that because back in the day when it came to lefties, people thought something was wrong with them, right? You were like evil. They was going to put you at the stake like a witch, burn you up, all this stuff. And then over time, people realized, oh, you're human like the rest of us. How can we help? Okay, so now we got left-handed scissors and all these different things. And so to the point that if you claim that you're a lefty or former lefty like myself, people don't trip. It's not a big deal, right? The fact that you got to purchase, or the fact that left-handed scissors have to be manufactured for you, it's not a problem, right? But isn't it crazy that although I may be a lefty, the rest of this stuff matter? My race matter, my sexuality matter, me being a woman, the gender matters, everything matters, right? And then now you have the current administration saying DEI is like I don't know how he thinks about it, but I said, it seems to me he thinks about it like it's a scholarship, right? Or grant, because we're not earning it. It's a grant to the American dream. And that's just not the case, right? And so I've been thinking about this over and over again, what I wanted to say today, how I want to tell my story. And I know it's a little bit different from the rest of the speakers today. But what I wanted to make sure that I gave you 3 messages. 1, you have to do it yourself. Do not wait for permission. 2, it's okay that you need certain help to get there. Even if it is a DEI initiative, whatever it is, use it, right? I'm gonna give you an example right here on that. And then the last part of it is that DEI is just a tool, right? And unfortunately, we call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's dumb, right? Diversity is intrinsic in being a human being, right? So we're going to be different. You have different animals, different bugs, different humans, right? So when do we transform that from DEI into HEI? Human equity and inclusion. Equity being the most important thing in that. That's what I'm building here. That's what this is. All I'm doing is building an infrastructure for people like Dr. Elsa and other startup founders to be able to get their products to market with less barriers. Now, I can't control FDA. I can't control EU, any other agencies. I can't give you a wake-up call every morning to say, check your email, right? I can't do none of that. But I can provide you a way to get there, right? So, with me thinking about human equity and inclusion, building all this infrastructure, I get up every day to do all these different things with team members. I'm not by myself. And the point I wanted to make as far as DEI and using it as a tool, I'm not gonna lie to you. I pumped this Black queer woman card everywhere, right? So that's how I was able to win first pitch competition I ever did for my company. I won first place, 13.5, $13,000, 500. Now that's not a lot, but it did a lot. Then I raised another 8.5, 8,500 that's during COVID, which is amazing, right? And then coming out of that, we received a grant for $2.5 million from Governor Tom Wolf in PA, and we have an opportunity to go raise more. And I just keep pumping that card, keep using my individuality, keep working hard to provide opportunities for folks like you, right? But it's not gonna work. It's not gonna be successful if y'all don't start taking your careers in your own and into your hands, especially as women. I gave an example how I messed up in between for different opportunities, right? Use that to pull yourself up and get to where you want to go. I promise you, everybody's gonna cheer you on when you get there. They may not cheer you on through the process. I'm sure Dr. Elsa and everybody else that talked today can attest to that. But you'll be the better person for it, and the world will be better for it. And I wish I had all those pictures of those Black women, but I have some. And so my quote for you today, outside of taking your career on your own reins, using DEI as a tool, is to never be limited by other people's limited expectations of themselves. And each one of those anecdotal stories I gave you, including the lefty, everybody outside of that individual thought they couldn't do it, thought there was something wrong with them, thought that they got to where they end up being by some type of grant or permission. None of that happened. So if you haven't left with anything else today, I think we've all had a common thing. We had different presentations, but you have to be your own self-advocate in order for this to work. You have to be your own self-advocate in order to change other people's mind. You have to be your own self-advocate to leave behind the story or the persona of yourself to the outward world. That's all on you.